So time went on the plantation, and the work was still hard, and the punishments for rule breaking were still rather harsh, and the workers really still had very little in terms of their food and their housing and their clothing and so on and so forth. But the workers had these weekly meetings to look forward to. And so all during the week they'd think of what they wanted to say, and at each meeting many of the workers would step forward and they'd voice their various frustrations and complaints, and they'd make their requests and ask for this or that. And usually they would be asking in one way or another to be allowed to work fewer hours for the plantation so they would have more time for themselves, whether for leisure or for working for themselves, building better houses or growing their own food or things like that. So that was usually what they were requesting. And Mr. Jones would always listen to what the workers had to say, and he'd always have a serious expression on his face. But usually, after they were finished, his response would be, well, things are tough all over, and the plantation couldn't yet afford to have the workers working fewer hours, couldn't yet afford to provide them with better housing or better clothes or more food or better food or things like that. But he kept promising, if we work together and we make this plantation better and we all work hard, we can get those things for us. But you can't get things for free. They don't just come out of nowhere. There's no such thing as a free lunch, so we have to work together and keep at it, and eventually we'll be able to get those extra things. So things on the plantation went on pretty much as they always had, except for the weekly meetings. Now, of course, the workers talked amongst themselves in between these weekly meetings, and a lot of them remained very excited by the new arrangement of the plantation and how things were working in the new meetings and the fact that you could speak out, because that was completely foreign to them. That no matter what was done to them, you never spoke up against the master. You never said anything. You never even voiced any shred of discontent or complaint about your situation in life. It simply wasn't done. So this was a drastically different reality for them. That now they had so much respect. They received so much respect from Mr. Jones that he would allow them to come up almost as equals and express what they wanted to see happen and express their complaints. And so, though their situation was pretty much as it always had been, they were much more optimistic and enthusiastic about their situation. That music means we're coming up on the break. In the next segment, we will finish this story. So stay tuned for more Outside the Cage. Welcome back to Outside the Cage. I'm your host, Larken Rose. Now, we're going to pick up where we left off with the story of the plantation, which went from being a plantation of slaves to a plantation of workers, and Mr. Jones describing how they were all in this together, despite the fact that their situation was more or less the same as it had ever been. Now, after a few weeks with these weekly meetings where the workers could speak up about their concerns and requests and complaints, after a few weeks of this, one worker named Samuel spoke up at one of the weekly meetings, and he said, "We have these meetings, but what else has really changed? Mr. Jones, you still control our lives. You still make us work for you. You still decide how much of what we produce we're allowed to keep for ourselves. we're all still slaves. Nothing has really changed. Your words are different, but your actions are still the same. You still punish us if we disobey you, or if we don't work hard enough for you. We aren't any more free than we were before. Now, when Samuel said this, a lot of the other workers, became upset. Not at Mr. Jones, but at Samuel. "We've never been able to speak up before," said one of the workers. "We've never had any input at all before. This is great. This is a huge step in the right direction." "That's right," said Mr. Jones. You've never had this sort of input before. And now when you work, you're not working for just me. You're working for all of us. We're all in this together now. Yeah, we still have to work hard and there are still rules, but we're in this together now. We're working together." And Samuel said, "Mr. Jones, you still make all the decisions. You still own and control everything here, including us. You say we're all working for each other, but that's not true. We're still working for you. Even when you called us slaves, you still let us sometimes work for ourselves, building our own huts and growing our own food. You let us do that even when we were slaves, so we wouldn't starve. Well, it's the same thing now. You still work us as much as you want. You still take from us as much as you want of what we produce. The only reason this plantation is worth anything is because of our work. We make it happen. We plant the cotton. We take care of the cotton. We tend the cotton. We pick the cotton. What do you do, Mr. Jones?" At this, many of the workers started yelling at Samuel, telling him to just shut up and not be such a malcontent. But Mr. Jones interrupted them, and he said, "No, Samuel is allowed to say what he thinks. He's wrong, of course. He just doesn't understand why there must be someone in charge, why there have to be rules. Without a plan, without organization, without rules, where would you all be? There would be no plantation, and you'd all be starving to death. You, without me, would never be able to make this work. You'd always be fighting over how to do things. You'd be bickering over how things work and who should do what and who owned what. What I do is add structure and order to your lives, making it so you can be safe and prosperous by running things. But I'll tell you what, Samuel, if you don't like it here, you are free to leave. You can either go work on Mr. Johnson's plantation to the east or on Mr. Smith's plantation to the west. Now, I think you'll find that both of them are rather cruel and harsh masters, and that life on either of them would be rather difficult compared to the life that you now have here. So I really think, Samuel, that you should be more thankful for what you have." And after Mr. Jones said this, the other workers continued to shout at Samuel for his insubordination and for being such a malcontent. So Samuel said no more at that meeting. At the meeting the following week, Mr. Jones made another announcement. He said, "It's time to allow some of you to be more directly involved in running this plantation. I'm going to appoint 10 of you, 10 of those of you who have been consistently hardworking and loyal to the plantation. I'm going to appoint you as order keepers. It will be your job to see to it that the rules of the plantation, those rules that exist to keep things orderly and peaceful around here for all of us, it'll be your job to see that those rules are followed." Now, during the week after he made that decree, the new order keepers accused Samuel of not doing his duties and of trying to persuade other workers to do likewise. And for that, Samuel was tied to a tree in front of Mr. Jones's house and received a whipping of 50 lashes from one of the appointed order keepers. And after that, Mr. Jones spoke up, and he said, "It pains me to do this, but you must understand Without rules, there is no order. And without order, there is nothing but chaos. Rules are what make us civilized. Without them, we would be no better than selfish, violent animals, always at each other's throats. We would all suffer a lot worse than what Samuel is suffering now, if not for the rules I have laid down that allow us to coexist in peace and harmony. Samuel's disregard for the rules and his attempts to foment discontent and disobedience among the rest of you, if those were allowed to continue unpunished, that would only hurt all of you. He has committed crimes against you as much as against me. Therefore, each of you who chooses to may administer one lashing to Samuel for having betrayed you and having endangered the secure and comfortable standard of living that you now enjoy. At the next weekly meeting, Mr. Jones was there, and beside him stood another man. I have another very important announcement, Mr. Jones began. This is my brother Edward. From now on, at the first meeting of each year, it will be up to you to decide whether I will be in charge of the plantation or whether my brother Edward will be in charge. And what that means is that really you will be in charge because you will be choosing which of us will run the plantation. Now, even Samuel can't complain about that, Mr. Jones added, glancing at Samuel. Samuel, after his whipping, had not spoken for a week, and now he did not look up and he did not say anything. With this final part of the plan in place, Mr. Jones said, I believe that the plantation is now complete. This is how it should run. You will choose who the leader of the plantation will be. And that really means that you are the leaders. You are really making the rules because you choose the rule maker. And we are here for your benefit. Whether I'm in charge or my brother is in charge, we are here now to serve you, to make possible all of what you see around you. This arrangement is what allows you to have your homes and your clothes and your food, not to mention your safety, protection not just against each other, but protection against any outside forces. We make sure you have that. These are things that you don't need to provide for yourselves because we provide them for you. We have replaced what would have been chaos and disorder with a predictable, comfortable situation for all of you. And for that, we ask only for your loyalty and devotion to this fine plantation and adherence to the rules which make it great and make this all possible. And after hearing that, all the workers but one, cheered out loud. But Samuel, whose whip wounds had become badly infected a few days before, fell down and died. None of the other workers noticed as they began loudly and happily to sing the praises of Mr. Jones. Then they all recited the chant they had written the week before. I pledge allegiance to the Big Red J and to the Jones plantation for which it stands, one community, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.